The aftershocks of grief travel far beyond the moment of loss, unseen, unspoken, but endlessly felt. They are quiet but far reaching ripples of pain that few ever recognize as part of loss. This is the part of grief you speak about, the way it lingers, echoes, reverberates through time. So when the aftershocks come, don't shame yourself for feeling the tremor. Pause. Breathe. Honor it. It's just love reminding you still exist. Zoe Clark. Bending, Not Breaking. The Legend of Korra. Book 1, Episode 7. The Aftermath.
Welcome back to another episode of Bending, Not Breaking. This is your host, Ben Pruitt, and we are excited because guess what? We're back. We're about to talk about the aftermath of everything that just happened and the ripples and shocks that came after. We talked about And the Winner Is, this really cool episode about how cheating is super cool, apparently. We talked about appeasement, exploring how people respond when tensions are up and how people ignore people cheating because the rest of everybody else around you is just chilling and watching. And so, like, why would you speak up? And we all realized that there was something more happening underneath. So we are talking about episode 7, and there's a lot of fallout, and it's fast. Arena shut down, trust is fractured, all kinds of stuff is going on. And it's less of a single event this episode and more like a series of aftershocks, the kind that don't just damage structures, but relationships and assumptions and the sense of safety that we all thought we had when we were just watching this cute little chubby 2-year-old bending all the elements. And so today we will be exploring, maybe you guessed it, the lens of aftershock, what lingers after disruption. And so I invite you all to be ready because we are going to have a great conversation about air at the end, and it's going to be fun. It's going to be a great time. And I invite you all to listen up and get ready because this is Bending, Not Breaking. And then we should have like cool music. Da-na-na-na, da-na-na-na.
That's what you're gonna go with? The final countdown,
right? Like, it's like it's good. It's just a good. What would you put? Huh? Do you have a better option?
I want like the Interstellar soundtrack, and like I want like.
You guys literally don't want the Legend of Korra like that soundtrack in like lo-fi version? No, we're just gonna go totally different universe.
It needs to be dramatic.
It can be dramatic.
I guess they're all gonna be what's the under copyright. So we can't use any of it technically.
We could use what is it? It's like you could use 30 seconds without getting hit with the copyright police.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to deal with the aftershocks of making that mistake. Speaking of aftershock, Maggie, you chose the lens. Will you help us understand what you're talking about and why you chose it?
Yeah, for sure. So the definitions are not fantastic, but we're just going to work with what the internet gave us. The specific definition of an aftershock is an after effect of a distressing or traumatic event. And then part 2, more of the physical side of things, is a minor shock following the main shock of an earthquake. And both of those are from our good old buddy, Merriam-Webster. And the reason I went with aftershock/aftershocks is thinking about, as I was watching the episode, how so many previous events basically led up to this big ripple event, right? And we've been seeing how even things that happened not on screen, right, like way in the past of like Asami's mom being, murdered. Can we say that on the podcast? I don't know. Yeah, I said it.
Why
Whatever.
not?
We can say murdered on the podcast.
Great. Fantastic. They don't say it in the kids show, but that's not the point. Right? So we're seeing how that, ripple effect is literally causing, spoiler alert, Sato to be working with the Equalists and, making weapons for them and trying to basically overpower all types of benders in the world. I was also thinking about there's this really good memoir that I read a couple years ago, and I wanted to pull a quote from that. But ironically enough, her book is titled Aftershocks, and none of her quotes that like talk about the aftershocks that she was dealing with actually use the word aftershocks. But I highly recommend Aftershocks by Nadia Owasu. It's spectacular. Deals with trauma.
We love trauma here on the
We
podcast.
love trauma.
We do.
Yes.
Turns out trauma's fun.
Yeah.
You heard it here first, folks. Trauma is fun. Anyway, so essentially what I'm hearing is this is the ripple effects, metaphorically speaking, after an event or
Yeah.
after really anything, right? And I think what you're hinting at is that this is an episode where the ripple effects from multiple different events all kind of like collide into this ultimately more shocking experience because of everything that's happening. I mean, is that fair to say? Did I name that well?
Yeah, no, that's fantastic because it's also interesting because there's definitely like the large aftershock that happens, but I would even say, and we can talk about this more in the discussion, that there are also smaller aftershocks that we see at the end of this episode and even in later episodes, like when we pull out a little bit and look at the bigger, overarching plot and character lines that are going to happen. Like, I would say there's a lot that comes from this episode specifically.
I think that's like, at what point do the determinists in the room all like just assume that like everything after this point is an aftershock, right? Like everything that occurs post is this ripple effect, right? That's constantly being affected by our past in a way, right? Like at what point does it cease to be an aftershock, right?
Yeah.
Which is an interesting question, I guess.
It's a great question.
I suppose that is up for the philosophers and not to us. But
I'm so glad you said that.
Anyway, great. Glad you're all here. Glad we're going to be talking about this. This discussion sounds like it's going to be lovely. Because it's not my turn, I'm very good at remembering that it is, in fact, time for the 30-second recap.
Wow.
Are you ready?
Yeah. Do you have a timer ready for me?
I certainly do.
Okay.
On your mark, get set, go.
So Lin and Mako are staying at Asami's mansion, much to Korra's dislike. The police raid Cabot Court's headquarters, finding Equalist weapons and posters, and immediately close it down. Not my Cabbage Corp! While hanging out at Asami's, Korra overhears a distressing phone call by Sato. Future Industries is searched, but no evidence is found. A worker reveals there's a secret underground facility beneath the Sato estate where the Equalist equipment is made. Lin, Tenzin, and the police and the teens investigate. Sato and his mecha tanks attack. Asami saves the day by using her father's glove to stun him. Allowing everyone to escape, Lin decides to resign as chief and work outside the law to take down the Equalists. You didn't give me my 5-second warning.
I did. I hold up 5, 4, 3, 2.
Okay, I'm sorry. I literally couldn't see it though because I only saw the person that was speaking and Kelly made a noise, so it actually lit up Kelly's screen.
Convenient.
So it's I'm hearing it's my fault. That's what I heard.
Yeah, that's convenient. Well, good news is that was excellent.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was very holistic. So there's a lot going on here. We've got a significant amount of ripple effects, as it were. Where should we begin?
Ooh. Okay, well, since I picked the lens, I think one of the main spots that really made me think of the aftershocks is the smaller one that we see at the beginning of the episode of where Korra asks Tenzin if it's okay for the fire ferrets, Mako and Bolin, to come stay at Air Temple Island. And then by the time she gets back over to the guys, Asami has already stepped in and been like, they can come stay with me, right? And then Korra has this little bit of jealousy and frustration. Um, and then the bigger aftershock of that is if they hadn't been hanging out at Asami's, because this is the first time we ever see the Asami estate or the Sato estate, who knows if we would have ever discovered or like how this would have happened, right? Because it's because of the phone call that Cora overhears from Mr. Sato's office that kind of is the catalyst for looking into future industries instead of everybody being like, oh, it's Cabbage Corp.
Mm.
Mm, that was loaded. That was loaded with a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I think you even in that there's several directions we could go.
Yeah.
I think I'm okay. I think for me, starting with Mako and Bolin and the housing situation is perhaps um, where I would focus first. Um, because I think that one of the things that is not addressed perhaps very well to people who have never experienced it is the experience of being a refugee, right? Of being someone who is truly displaced from their home and has nowhere to go. And usually there is not an Asami or a Korra who is able and willing to take people in. And so the aftershock of this terrorist attack, if we're willing to call it that, is very interesting. Like there's like people who are shocked, who are like there I bombs, there were
I
bombs,
think so. Yeah.
right? Uh and this is very much like a an attack on a city in which people don't feel safe. And I have a hard time not connecting this to perhaps more egregious versions that we are currently dealing with in our own lives. And perhaps not us directly, but that we are witnessing across the ocean. Um, and so I guess there's a lot of unaddressed, makes it look easy kind of a feel here. So in a way, I'm really grateful, right, that Mako and Bolin aren't homeless now, but they're able to get through this kind of disruption and this aftershock, as it will. They're able to handle this ripple because of community that they have. Um, okay, other thoughts on this.
Well, one of the things that's really interesting too about this situation where if someone experiences the place that they live and that's all of a sudden taken away without notice and they don't have a plan set up, right? It's not just you're moving locations, it's literally where you were living is no longer safe, etc.
Yeah.
Both of the instances that we see here with the boys going to stay at the Sato estate is that, and eventually Air Temple Island, is it's both outside of the city. So it's taking them outside of the literal circumstance and like area that was affected. So it's like allowing them to be fully removed instead of having to say, like, if someone next door to the arena was like, hey, you guys can stay here and then look every single moment at this traumatic experience you just had, right? And that comes from that sense of community, but also the privilege that they had. But also, speaking, if we pull out of the Legend of Korra, even outside in the world, right? A lot of refugees, that's what you see. Either they're encamped on the site that has been bombed or whatever, or they have to move out of that whole area and now are, staying in another space that's basically being hosted outside by others, right? Like they flee to a different country or, a different community. And I just thought that that was really interesting to see how perhaps there is more ability for them to, like, they're very playful at the beginning of this episode, right? Because they're in a space that is of luxury and like they're enjoying the swimming pool and then they're
It's pretty
enjoying,
nice.
yeah, they're enjoying the racetrack and all of these luxuries that they've never had the privilege to experience before. And then, it's like you take a better look at what those, or like how they got those privileges, right? And all of that, a lot of it comes from the funding of the equalist movement. And like you pull back the curtain, right? And like, ooh, it's really ugly on the inside.
Um,
Mm.
I guess the I think it's a good point to say that, we're even running an Avatar Legends campaign right now where
Mm-hmm.
we dealt with refugees in a way, right? Massive tidal wave hits oceanfront town and the entire city is devastated. And where do we go? What do we do? Who do we save? Who's pointing fingers? Like there's a lot of tension involved there. And I think that this episode kind of pulls the curtain up a little bit and just kind of like, no, it's not that big a deal. We're just going to divert over here to privilege. Um, but yeah, I guess it's just a matter of like, this is not possible without community, and not only community, but people of means in that community. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I think that's really important. Um, but yeah, I mean, you keep pointing to this idea of Cora starting to sniff out what's going on, right? There's this phone call, but she's largely operating on instinct or intuition, whatever we want to call it. Um, and so I suppose my question here is, do we think that had they gotten to come over to Asami's house and this event had not just happened and she overheard that call, would she be as suspicious? And so I guess part of my question uh, is this the ripple effect of the attack, or would she have still felt this kind of suspicion and level of suspicion if she had just attended the equalist rally, but there hadn't been an attack yet? So I guess I'm wondering how much this event increased Cora's suspicion and her intuition on that. So I guess that's my question to all of you.
Yeah, I was wondering that too when I was watching the episode. I was like, why is she immediately like suspicious of Asami's dad? Like, why does she immediately have to go like listen to this private phone call, like eavesdrop on him? But I think maybe yes, because of the attack on the arena, but also I feel like from the beginning of the Sato sponsorship of her team, I feel like I don't know, and kind of her like dislike of Asami, I kind of think that she would have listened in anyways because she would have been trying to make, I don't know, maybe not, but I feel like finding maybe a reason that like their team doesn't need to rely on the Sato Corporation as much. That's what my thought is. But yeah, I was kind of like, why is she so invested in this right
So
off the
you're
get-go?
you're pointing to this is what Maggie was talking about at the beginning. It's like multiple events are contributing to this.
Hmm.
So it's her dislike of
This
Asami
is why we have
because
no
she
free
likes
will.
Mako, right? She likes Mako, at least to an extent, right? And therefore Asami is ick. And therefore Sato is ick. And therefore Equalists are ick. And also, ew. So like it's like, would she be suspicious and more generous had not all of those things occurred? And the question is, I doubt it, but like that's kind of the point. Is that events have a consequence, and I feel like the consequence of all of these things is that this is leading to Korra being sus in this moment.
I think another thing to keep in mind is like we talked about how easily Bolin and Mako were able to go to the Sato estate. And a lot of that is because when these kinds of traumatic events happen, people at different levels or different parts of the community are impacted disproportionately. Bolin and Mako, they their livelihood is pro bending. That's where they live. They grew up in poverty, and so they are going to be hit among the hardest when something like this happens. When they go to the Sato estate, you immediately see a night and day difference in terms of how that quality of life changes. Because the Sato estate and the Satos, obviously, being part of the community, they see the impacts of it, but they don't really feel the aftershocks in the same way. You know, they're still using their pool, they still have, butlers, and if anything, they can take advantage of that situation financially, which we see Hiroshi doing with working with the Equalists. So I think that when Korra sees, or hears Hiroshi talking on the phone and talking about, what's happening with Cabbage Core, I think at some level she knows that he's not really feeling the impact in the same way. So someone in his position could pretty easily take advantage of an
Mm.
opportunity that is created by it. So,
Which
Mm.
is again like this disproportionate effect is really kind of highlighting the issue, right? Where uh in a world where we have billionaires bordering on trillionaires, which is a wild thing to say, um, where the average person struggling to pay for food and rent and healthcare, then the people who are like, no, that's not a big deal. Oh, you're struggling to pay for healthcare? Perfect. We can capitalize on that. And in a way, we're seeing that cycle happen on screen. Of course, it's in a situation that is not a direct correlation, but it's pretty darn close to what we experience in a wealth gap economy. And yeah, I mean, like the aftershocks for someone who has privilege and means are often positive, whereas ripples for people whose housing is destabilized are wildly more impactful. Um, yeah, it's a big difference. I appreciate the delineation there. That's huge.
Well, and it's also interesting to think about as well. And granted, because Asami, you know, did the invite, it's a little bit different, but also the thought of like when someone is displaced, that they're in survival mode, right? So, yes, Korra was going to offer them to go to Air Temple Island, but they didn't know that because Korra, had to go and check with Tenzin and all of that. So then here comes Asame with, oh, you guys can stay, on our estate. And like, how often does that happen where if you're in a crisis mode that you take the first available option because you don't know if something else is better, or not necessarily better, but if another option is even coming. So you don't even realize that you have options. And then all of a sudden you're in a situation that actually could be even worse than what you were in before.
Yeah, so you're kind of saying that we are more likely to operate out of scarcity.
Yeah.
And feel as though, well, this is the only option we're ever going to get. We have to take this.
Mm-hmm.
Which is an interesting, assertion. I think my gut tells me that even if they had heard from Korra first, that they probably would have been like, but Asame's is better. She has a pool. Especially knowing Bolin, right? Bolin's going to be like,
Mm-hmm.
what do you mean? We can go have a pool? Mako, come on. Yeah, my gut tells me that had they had the choice, they probably would have chosen that anyway. And frankly, I might have too, right? If
Mm-hmm.
I didn't
Mm.
assume that something was up, I would like to be in with the people who don't feel as much pain uh, in the after events like this. So I don't know that that's always true for people who have a similar situation occur to them, but I definitely feel that here,
And I think
given
an
the
interesting,
relationship.
sorry, an interesting thing to keep in mind with this discussion is, we're talking about, oh, would they have gone with Korra's option? Would they have gone with Asami's option? And one of the things that the episode actually outright tells us is that, Korra, before she extended the offer, she took the time, she went to Tenzin, she asked if it was okay for them to stay with them at Air Temple Island. And it's, Asami explicitly says, like, oh, I actually didn't tell my dad until you got here because I figured it would be better to ask for forgiveness than permission. So I'm curious what you guys think about that dynamic, and especially since, in the time it took for Korra to ask Tenzin, Asami had already asked without her father's explicit approval. So I'm sure there's something there.
Well, I mean, it's an assumption, right? But it's again speaks to the privilege involved, right? Asami can do this and withstand the ripple effects of her dad being upset, right? There's the risk reward, right? I'm willing to take the risk of whatever my dad might say, right? And that again is something where it's like, I don't have to risk that much. And so I'm willing to take this hit. And there are definitely times where I would rather ask for forgiveness than for permission. And it's just saying that I am okay with the aftershock. I'm okay with what's going to come after. If it at worst that happens, I can handle it. I think that's what you have to like. If you're betting, then you're betting on that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because I also think that, looking at Tenzin's character and looking at Hiroshi's character, especially what we learn about Hiroshi in this episode, I think that there is very little chance of Korra asking Tenzin and Tenzin saying no. And I think that if Asami asks Hiroshi, Hiroshi probably says no.
Mm. That's such a
Which is
good
interesting.
point. Yeah, because I would say a couple episodes prior to all that has happened, and like the relationship that Korra and Tenzin had even like 3 episodes ago, the fact that, because Korra is working on not being so impulsive, right? So now we see this moment where she goes and talks to Tenzin, right? Because they've experienced trauma in the previous episode, but even the episode before that, he was seeing how the training was, working on her bending abilities and being a teaching tool, right? So now they've come to this sort of understanding. They're speaking the same language together now versus speaking two different languages and not being able to communicate and meet in the middle. So I also saw the part where Korra went to talk to Tenzin. Is Korra trying to continue to show, I am listening to you. I am paying attention to how you want me to be a better avatar slash a more communicative teenager slash, all of those things. And then it's very interesting because Tenzin is a mentor slash master of airbending, right? That Korra is learning from. And then taking what Rahul was just pointing out with how Asami was like, oh, I'll ask for forgiveness instead of permission. And Asami is this socialite who it is her father. She's an only child. Her mother died when she was young. So it's one of those instances where there's probably very little that she has done that has gotten her in trouble with her dad because of that social setting, right? And how much he dotes on her. There's the reference of, her dad put her in martial arts training from a very young age and taught her how to drive and do all of these things, right? Because he wants her to be safe and protected. And even though we learn later on that he doesn't like Mako, we see how Asami's influence, right? Because it's because of Asami that Sato Industries backed and became the sponsor of the Fire Ferrets, right? And even though all of that is happening, Asami has been the one orchestrating that. And, we learn later on that, Sato throws that nothing more than a firebending street rat at Mako. And
Oof.
that's the first time that we see his
True colors.
I was gonna say that, but I was like, oh, don't sing True Colors. Do something. Have a better thought. But yes.
Nope.
Yep. Thank you, Ben.
There is nothing better. There is nothing better than singing True Colors, folks. The interesting piece about, he would probably say no, whereas Tenzin would have likely said yes regardless. Is It's not that he wouldn't have done anything. It's that I think what he would have done would have been to keep them in his good graces, but probably out of the house. Sure, we'll happily buy you a condo in the city, or we'll, short term get, maybe not buy a condo, you know what I mean. But sure, we'll, help you rent an apartment until you get back on your feet. But I doubt he would have invited them in, or maybe it's just he's so confident that he's, maybe it's hubris, right? Maybe it's like, no, sure, come on in. I have nothing to hide here. But yeah, it's an interesting question whether it would have been overconfident or whether it would have been, nope, I'm going to keep you at a distance. But I don't know. It's an interesting question. But again, it kind of points to the layers of aftershock, right? And I think this kind of pointing towards Asami here for a minute is, the revelation about her dad isn't just political. It is deeply, deeply personal. And duh. But but it's one of those things where uh I feel like this big overarching problem of this city is undergoing this terrorist threat to I am experiencing this right here, right now, personally. And we see that happen with several people, like Mako and Belen are like, oh no, this is happening to me personally. We have Korra with Amon. Oh, this is happening to me personally. But it's also this citywide thing. And there are political ramifications of all of these things as well. And so these different layers of the personal, the political, the communal, the uh, multiple layer aftershocks are something that are particularly important, I think, to keep in mind that, each an event doesn't just affect one or the other, right? It affects everything in under its scope. So if it is indeed a holistic citywide threat, it is also affecting people on a personal level. And I think we were pointing to that with like Cora being suspicious um, of 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 everybody. Is that's her personal aftershock, whereas the bigger and bigger and wider are the housing, the political, like we're shutting these things down, we're putting up barricades everywhere, we're protecting people at all costs, we're not letting people go here, there's curfews, like there's just so many layers involved here that without paying attention to each one, we fail to see the scope.
I think it's good storytelling that each of kind of our main characters and kind of the secondary characters have a personal, I think, stake in the game. Like it's not really a story where like we're talking about, privileged characters coming down to the people to be like, oh, I begin to understand their plight, because we've got Mako and Bolin, right? Directly, like their lives are directly affected by this, right? Asami has this now personal, you know, revelation because of this event, right? Even like Lynn, her
Yeah.
failure at this event, right, having major ramifications. Tarlok benefiting from this, right? Tenzin getting involved. He's also obviously a council member, and a prominent city figure, being personally now involved in these investigations. Cora as the Avatar, it's her friends that are affected, but also she has a larger, like, figurehead role in this. And so I think
Yeah.
that it's good storytelling that each each of these people is brought in, I think, in a meaningful way, not just in a way where it's like, why was he even there? What is that? What do they even have to do with that? Like they could just leave this problem alone. It doesn't have anything to do with them. But I guess through obviously the pro bending, it starts there, but like beyond that, not just because of that.
That's a great point, Kelly. And I think one of the other things that the show does really well is exploring how there are different kinds of privilege that like intersect with each other. So,
Mhm.
like for example, at the beginning of the show, we see Cora has never needed to actually spend money on anything
Yeah.
when she comes to the city, and she's, been taken care of by the White Lotus, and that comes with its own kind of like complications with how she grew up.
Hmm.
We also have Mako and Bolin, who, while they grew up in poverty, they're also living in a bending centric environment. And they're very, very
Yeah.
good, capable benders who are able to find a job as pro benders, and they're built in a world that is designed around them. That in the way that Hiroshi and Asami are not. And Hiroshi and Sami, in turn, have their own privilege of being incredibly, incredibly wealthy and being able to, discretionarily give Asami access to like self-defense training and all these other, you know, amenities to keep her safe. But you have privileges of different kinds that are overlapping with each other, and each of these people also has things that they are personally dealing with, um,
Yeah.
specific challenges as well. So I think it's really, really effective.
Yeah. The word that comes to mind for me is irony, right? It's ironic that Hiroshi caring so deeply for his daughter is ultimately what brings him down because she has the training and capacity to resist. And it's an interesting aftershock, if you will, of this, I guess the question that's coming up and like brewing here is out of, very kind, nurturing, caring intent, Hiroshi invested in his daughter's well-being. Out of very malicious and malignant intent, he intended to dismantle the bending uh, establishment. And I wonder if those two things are like they feel like they're working against each other, right? To the point where his nurturing and kind and caring and investment and etc. in Asami is overriding what he has done. And not overriding, I suppose, but it certainly impacts his, other aims. So I guess, can you be doing like good and bad without them coming into conflict with one another?
Yeah,
Sometimes,
sometimes.
especially when it's involved with parents and children.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because he even was like, I've shielded you from this. I've tried to keep this from you as long as I can. Basically splitting his intentions between.
Well, and I also think about what like the aftershock would be if going farther back, if Asami hadn't run over Mako, they never would have met and she never would have been, right? Like this is what I mean. She never would have been invested in the pro bending the way she was, and then she never would have started hanging around with the avatar, and then she never would have started seeing how the equalist movement was actually negatively
Hmm.
impacting the
Hiroshi
benders.
forgot to make her bigoted towards benders.
Yeah,
Messed that one
exactly,
up.
right? So she has this, because she isn't, we see she's a very kind person from the beginning, right? Offering to, like, she's so sorry for running him over, like, she doesn't blame him, she takes the responsibility, and then she goes, I can't really, like, fully make it up to you, but, like, let me, like, at least take you to dinner type of thing. Like, I have wealth, let me use that to, like, help in this situation. And then she uses her influence and her prestige and her father's money later on. But then there's also the ripple effect of, she is in a romantic relationship with Mako, but also is like spending time with the avatar and seeing all of these social justice instance like examples up close and personal, which I would assume being outside of the city on the family estate that she's been sequestered and not as aware in, right? So I think that's where we see that moment where if all of those events hadn't rippled and happened already, that if her father had handed her the glove, it would have been a much different reaction, possibly, because she could take it and go, there would be enough not propaganda, but kind of propaganda to be like, I built these machines to protect you because of your mother. And there would be
Hmm.
enough emotional manipulation. That was the word I was looking for. Enough manipulation for her to go, this makes sense to me.
Yeah. Woof.
Woof, indeed.
Yeah. I guess, there's a part of me that, there are not just negative consequences, right? Like I think
Mm-hmm.
aftershock is not just a bad thing to the point where we talked about earlier, where Sato Industries benefits from this, right? Um, and the ability to capitalize on devastation is a benefit. But I think there's also benefits in other layers as well, and in the form of like realization and learning. And there's a hidden factory and this equalist technology, and it's clearly been uncovering something that's been building for a long time. It's not sudden. It's been there. It's been hidden. It's been growing. And in a way, learning that this has been going on is a shock for the group. They're like, "Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh." Like there's so much uncovered here, and it's a maybe this isn't always true, but aftershocks potentially being something that you are learning about what was already in motion, right? Your assumptions are turned upside down. And I guess I'm wondering if it's more upsetting or problematic when it turns what you expect into something else. Um, versus, oh, I'm learning something new. This is really neat. I'm excited to learn this. Versus, oh my gosh, this is changing everything I thought I knew. So I don't know. There's just I guess it's neither positive nor negative, but I am reflecting on this point. Help me.
Mm, think, yeah, like, yeah, the revelation of truth of, yeah, something they're learning you said learning, like the aftershock of I've learned something. And I think that it's interesting that for Asami, like the truth to her is more important than that like familial loyalty
Mm-hmm.
between her and her father. And I thought that was, I mean, I know what happens in the show, obviously. I knew what was going to happen, but she spends a fair portion of the prior investigations defending him vehemently, which I think is
Yeah.
also very valid given the circumstances of the attack. Obviously, she's like, just because we're not benders, doesn't mean that, you know, which I felt like what she was saying was very valid because I think not to like leave this part, but the other thing that struck me about with the idea of aftershocks is that after such an event, they're looking for somebody to blame, right? They're looking for, and obviously there's evidence, those were air quotes, evidence, and there's information, that leads to certain things, that supposedly leads to the closing of Cabbage Corp and, all these things. But I think she is savvy to be on the lookout for them becoming the scapegoat for this
Yeah.
situation. Um, so I think I don't know. Sorry, that thought ended abruptly right there. But anyways, they're looking for somebody to blame, and it turns out they found the right one by the end of the episode. But still,
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Other moments of aftershock that we want to make sure we touch on.
The one thing that I wanted to make sure we spoke about, and like we don't really get to see in this episode what happens with it, but we're going to see it as we talk about it, the next couple episodes going forward, of Lynn's decision, like we briefly touched on it, but Lynn's decision to leave and step down as chief
Weird.
because of all that has happened, right? We take the previous episode where TLOK basically was like, right, talk about finding the scapegoat, finding someone that can take the full blame, right? The only way TLOK signed off on allowing the pro bending match to happen was if Lynn took the blame, right? So now we see
Mm-hmm.
the aftershocks of that. And then Lynn thinking in the beginning of this episode that even though she failed in that instance, but then she's going to be able to find through Cabbage Corporation at first, right? That this is where it's coming from. And then it turns out that it's possibly not Cabbage Corp. And then, right, so we're seeing these ripples and how it's spiraling. And then by the very end, almost the last shot, it's Lynn telling Tenzin that she's going to step down, and then Tenzin taking that as he thinks Lynn is like quitting, and then Lynn is like, no, it's time to work outside the law, which is hilarious because that's such a Toph thing to do, right?
and
So
she says,
like,
"My way. I'm going to do it my way." I'm like, "You're the chief of police.
yeah.
How would it be your way?"
But I just loved that was the moment where it was kind of getting to see more of Lynn's personality outside of being chief of police. And like you can see a little bit more of the influence of Toph on, and we know Toph was not the most attentive mother and was very strict. Like we see that later on too, of like how the parent relationships were
Yeah.
not what we would have expected. But in this little moment here, I think that was just like the little, I don't know, like seed to throw out of like being like, there's some of Toph right there that has now passed down to Lynn with that strong-willed and like, I'm gonna make this happen, especially after being the second greatest metal bender in the world other than her mom, and specifically not being able to bend the machines. I think that was the catalyst for her to
Yeah.
go, I'm done working within these confines of the law that my mom made. It's now time for me to do it my way.
Yeah, I feel like the piece of that I want to circle back to what is Tarlock, because you know what we see with Tarlock is wild, right? Because he is, it almost feels from an audience perspective like he an equalist, right?
Literally, I'm like, he planned this. He planned this.
He's behind, he is, there's something up here. He must be behind like that. And it's so funny because we know that he genuinely is like thinking that his way of doing things is what's best. And we like, wild. What a wild, like he's actively going against all of these other ways in which there are, I guess, Tenzin, Korra, etc., the team Avatar, and he's going about dealing with the Equalists in a frankly counterproductive way that we see from the outside looking in, that it's not always easy to see from the inside. Um, of course, Tenzin and Korra and etc. people are seeing it, but there's a lot of people that do agree with Tarlock. You're right. Lynn does need to step down. This is the worst option ever. Blah 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 blah. And so, I guess, what is it about Tarlock that leads him down that path versus the right one? And of course, like that is me being a person who is saying that this is the right way. But like I don't know. Like I'm struggling with that.
Kelly, were you gonna say that it's his dad?
Oh no. No, I was gonna say it's his innate desire for self-preservation,
But
which
Mm.
doesn't that stem back from his father?
The
probably,
aftershocks of
but
his
let's
father.
let's not give his dad all the credit. Geez, I mean Tarlock also, he got a brain in there, I think, but he's just
Kelly's
not.
saying that determinism isn't real.
Let's have it not be real, for personal reasons.
Well, I think what Kelly's also saying is that, like, you know, Tarlock's father might be partially responsible for the position that Tarlock is in, and it might have informed the decisions that Tarlock makes, but it does not excise him from accountability for the things that he has
Mm,
done.
mm.
Because,
Yes.
he still made those decisions.
Yes, Queen. Yes.
Amen.
Yeah. Say it again, louder for
My
the
fa
people in the back.
my favorite A word.
Amen.
Oh no,
Accountability.
Oh,
accountability.
like I was like, wild choice. Interesting.
I don't think Amen's making the top 10. Maybe for
I can't
just the
believe
thing.
Aftershock isn't in your top 10. What do you mean?
Ooh, I'm gonna have to add it in, I guess.
Okay. Anything else before we transition? All right,
Let's
hearing none.
do it.
Doodle-oo, doodle-oo, doodle-oo. Uh, insert transition music here. Uh, we'll do it in post. Y'all like that? That was a good joke.
That was a great
It's very
bringing it
funny.
back.
Best
Good
jokes
callback.
have a hint of truth.
Yep. So next on our agenda is Twee and La. Twee and La push and pull, balance. We need both. So, this is our opportunity to note moments from the episode that pulled us in, things that pushed us away. This may be part of the story. This may be part of the things that are extra story, aka music, writing, the visuals, the things we don't usually talk about. So, with that in mind, what pulled us in? What pushed us away?
Okay, I gotta steal it because it's, I think, the most blatant. What pushes me away is how Bolin is just like immediately being an asshole in the Sato estate and just being like, my towel, please. Pat me dry. Don't. And then the poor servant guy is just like, because he jumps right back, and I was like, oh, that really get on my nerve. I only got one nerve left, and he was on it. So stupid, especially, yeah, I was like, this feels like foreshadowing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not great. It's not great.
Would you say we're about to see the aftershocks from this moment?
Dun dun
I
dun.
hate to think that this is a formative moment for Bolin. I really hate to think that. I just want to, everyone's been on vacation, and been at an all inclusive, and you're like, this feels wrong. I'm starting to feel wrong. Bolin he didn't get that tingling.
I was about to say, like, has he been on an experience like that? I don't
No,
think he
I don't think
has.
so, but
Um,
feels like we should know better. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, I mean, it does not look good, but it is funny that Maggie. I know you say it in jest, but like, this is his first taste of privilege, and he likes it,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think it certainly informs season two Bolin, which is potentially the worst Bolin that exists. But so it goes.
I'll do my poll too so that we can go subsequently after that. My poll is
Yes,
that
keep balance. Keep balance.
Tenzin and Lin not immediately like writing off Korra and being like, Korra, like, bullshit, we're
GTFO.
not listening to you. Like, you're just a stupid little girl. Get out of here. I feel like that trio, their working relationship in the last like two episodes, it's nice. It's very nice.
Mm.
Gorgeous.
Love it.
I'm gonna say my poll is Asami and Korra racing together, because I think Asami probably has gathered that Korra doesn't really like her that much, and so her making an effort to connect with her as an individual and not just as part of like the group, I think is really really cool. Um, I mean, I'm not gonna pretend that like at this point of the show they probably weren't thinking of them together yet, but I think it's cool.
My
We're seeing the
awakening begins
aftershocks.
here.
We're seeing the
It's a good
aftershocks
start.
of this connection.
A hot girl takes you on a race car. I mean, I think that would do a lot for a
I
lot of people.
literally said
Oh,
that
dear.
while watching the episode because I was with two of my friends and I was like, this is the moment. I think this is where the seed is planted. Anyway.
I mean, the meme is with Asami in the pool, right? That's where the awakening
Oh
happens in the
yeah.
meme, right? Like
yeah.
of like what is it? Like, oh gosh. There's a joke. I forget what it is. I'm bad at jokes.
Well, so I would
Um,
say like on the level of physical attraction, yes. But then on the level for Korra of like Asami's capability and her not being able to bend but be able to do something exceptionally well, this is the moment that like Korra goes, "Oh."
yeah. Also,
Anyway.
you're not a fuddy duddy. You're not a
Mhm.
regular girl. You're a
I'm not like the other girl.
I'm not like
yeah.
the other girls.
Yeah.
Cora's like, oh my gosh, another girl who's not like the other girls? Crazy. And we're both here at the same.
I mean, y'all, let's be real. That's no joke.
Yeah.
And I guess my push is so like we see Lynn try to metal bend this door back open that ends up being platinum, but I guess they could have just used the ground the whole time because Bolin like put a tunnel up underneath and she didn't try to do that. Like, great, awesome.
Yeah, the continuity right there is not
Yeah,
strong.
yeah,
Listen, you exploit the ground in our campaign, okay? You
yeah,
exploit the ground. That's all I'm saying.
yeah.
It's not
But
it
Lynn is
is
exploiting the ground a lot in
it
this
is
episode.
not cinematically appealing every single time to retreat into the ground. Okay?
Hey,
That's all I'm
but it
saying.
is canon. It is canon. This is showing that Chondro is within canon rights.
Yeah, I mean,
Hmm.
like, all I'm gonna say is, so Lynn has like a whole thing. Well, she can like remove the bottom of her feet so she can seismic sense.
Hmm.
You know, it's right there.
Yep. Maybe
Listen,
she
it was a tense moment.
yeah. Yeah. Anyway, we don't always think straight. Uh oh dear. Yeah, there's a lot. I forget them. Like none of them come to mind, but moments like this throughout the series where I'm like, you could just bend and fix this. Like, what do you mean? Why is this an issue? um yeah, so I find that I often forget or have realizations that people in story don't realize of like, what do you mean? Why is this an issue? Like you can just literally
Mm.
like wave your hands and fix this or get around this obstacle.
Mhm.
Um, but I digress. Uh, I think one of the things I really appreciate, despite our conversations around it, is just the visibility of how quickly both Korra and Asami, both women, are offering help so quickly. And their first instinct is to provide and assist and help and support. And I think that what a beautiful gift they are giving us. I also find it somewhat frustrating that they are both reporting to or seeking from their father figures in this case, or their mentor, who are both men. And so it's this really interesting dynamic of teenage girl with adult man who gets the last say. And that bleeds into, pushing away. But this originally, the gut instinct for both of them to support their friends is something I think if what if we all had more instincts like that? What if we were all able and had the capacity to be able to do that more often? That would be super neat.
Did you say your pull, or it's like bleeding into the pull and push?
That
Is that what you're
I mean,
saying?
that was really my pull, and it kind of bled into a little bit of a
Okay.
push. And so it was just a little bit of both,
Okay.
honestly. It was TBH. It was a little bit of both.
Just making
Um,
sure you're like done with your thoughts
yeah,
fully.
yeah.
Okay. Sweet. Um, wow, so many moments. I think it was really frustrating because you guys took all of the points that I was like, that could be a push, and that could be a push, and that could be a push, and then you all said the pushes. So I'm gonna find a different push, but I'm gonna start with the pull, which is fine. I think what I really enjoyed is the airship scene that we get at the end where Tenzin is working to comfort and, check on Lynn, which then Korra goes to, after Mako goes, is this, I forget the word he says, like, are we still, right, where he's like, basically, can we still stay with you, right? Asking now that, once again, the place of shelter is no longer an option. And Korra goes, of course. And then she extends it to Asami as well. But then not only after extending that open home option for Asami, then like kind of nudges Mako back over to Asami to be like, hey, she's really going to need you right now on that emotional side of things. And I think that was just like Korra is still having a lot of conflicting feelings, but to have that sense of it's not about me right now. And like Asami just went through something significantly more traumatic than the rest of us experienced because she just had a full, like, what has my world been, slash, like, what has my father been doing this whole time? So, like, her ability to, send Mako back over to Asami to offer at least that sense of connection and comfort of having someone wrap your arms around them in a hug, right? So like that's a really beautiful moment. And I
Agreed.
think the push that I have is I think there's just similar with like the storyline, like just looking out but both back and then forward and wanting some more like let's see, I guess more of like the backstories to like then follow these aftershock lines that we're now going to experience going forward and being like, because it's not just one moment, right? It is that ripple effect of this happened, then this consequence happened, right? So like Ben was saying earlier, every action has a consequence. They're not all positive or negative, but then we're like, truly getting a chance to zoom out a little bit and see, oh, so like this is how we get season 2 Bolin, but then this is also how we got season 1 of Sato Industries, but like, right, so having just a little bit more, I guess it's like not just backstory, but just like a little bit more in-depth moment with those moments of the initial earthquakes that these characters have that then cause more of these aftershocks.
Reaction has an equal and opposite reaction. This is the law of equivalent exchange.
Yes. Also that.
Full Metal Alchemist. Sorry.
Full Metal Alchemist. You got to say it twice because it always says
Yes.
it twice. Yeah, if you haven't seen that, listeners, get on it. It's so
You
good.
gotta watch it. It's so good.
So anything else that we want to mention in this? I said it. You actually all said it kind of in jest, but I'm reminded of this idea of like, oh, not like other girls is often a push for me because like, why can't you just be like other girls and also be attractive, right? And it's the same thing. Like it's just so common, particularly for women, to have to be more manly in order to be attractive, and that is frustrating, masculine, if you will. So I digress. Moving on. We have a new transition noise. Insert here. We are moving on to our what we have called our devotion, our ending, our mindful moment. And this is our moment with the element of air. Maggie, what are we doing?
Today we're doing something new that we haven't done yet, which is exciting. We're going to do deep breath, which is where we're actually going to take a literal breath of air together. So let's inhale, hold it, and exhale it through your mouth. Excellent. And then, as one of my dear sensei friends always says, repeat as necessary when it comes to anything breathing wise, which I think is just brilliant.
Indeed.
So good. But now what we're going to do, now that we've had that moment of deep and intentional breath, is we're going to name an idea that we're going to carry lightly. So not like really focus on, but just kind of have it in our aura and our front of our mind of something we want to keep in motion rather than kind of constricting and grasping onto it really tightly. So I will go first since I chose the action step that we're going to do to give you guys kind of a moment. One of the things that I have been recently, like, I don't know if studying is the right word, but trying to become more informed on is trauma in a fantastic word. We love trauma. We love trauma so much and how it affects so many things. And then the difference between trauma and complex PTSD versus PTSD and all of these things. And there's a lot of it where sometimes it feels like there's an overload of information while also not receiving all of the information that you want to receive. So one of the things that I've been doing recently is like if I read something that I find is like really helpful with me to like basically unpack and understand something from my own past or just better understand the word trauma on a more in-depth level is to write it down or have like a little printer that basically can like print from a book essentially and like I can put it in my physical journal and kind of creating that compilation of having a reference of like, oh, I'm struggling with this today. Now let's go pull my little compilation of what part is this triggering for me or like what is this bringing to me and why, and that just having that ability of realizing without trying to like basically track down everything that's ever happened but just jotting down little moments where I'm like, oh, I felt this way, but like I necessarily don't need to feel that way. And like, why did I feel that way? But basically, so like, again, going back to my lens of aftershocks of realizing that a lot of the things that happen are from, the previous earthquake that has happened 15, 20, 25 years ago and seeing all of these ripple effects and being like, oh, let's identify that and just kind of make aware of it and not necessarily have to like pull it apart and analyze it, but just say, oh, I see you. And I now see you and I'm just gonna see you for a moment and just gonna verbalize that and say it.
Yeah. I mean, dang. One
Mhm.
idea, huh?
One idea.
That sounded like you got a host of things that you're holding on to. But it also sounds like the idea is that you can pay attention to them and not let them be a response that is unexamined, right? It's
Mhm.
a response that you're aware of, and now you know why, and now you can pay attention to. And so that sounds very fruitful. I was thinking about tying it to the lens too, and thinking about how like everything I say and do has a has a consequence. Good, bad, ugly, positive, negative. And I think about this like when I immediately went to driving, um, where the story I tell myself a lot is that other people aren't very considerate on the road. Uh, and I, for instance, am driving behind someone who's going slow in the fast lane. And I'm like, you are holding up literally every other person who's behind you. And all you have to do is get over in the other lane. And there's zero willingness to do that. But it's not necessarily that, right? It's my reminder that, everybody's in their own little world. And sometimes they're just not even paying attention. But I think that is kind of the point that I want more people to pay attention to the people that are around them and to realize that they can make decisions that could impact the most people positively. For instance, if you're at a light, red light, and you need to turn, and you're the first person in the line, and everybody behind you is going to have to wait, right? There's not much you can do, but the person in the other lane can think for a second and pause and say, let them turn first so that everybody behind that car will be able to go. And to me, that is very considerate and important. And so part of me is like, I see that so clearly on the road because I get annoyed. And part of me is wondering how I can see that elsewhere in other places where how can I like pause and let someone else turn, metaphorically speaking, so that everybody behind them can move forward. Um, so I guess I want to be on the lookout for that. And so, this is an idea I'm carrying rather than something I can implement, right? But I guess that's what I want to look for. Moments where I can make one pause and make it infinitely easier for a lot of people without much effort on my part. That's my thought. That's my deep breath.
All right.
And
My I've been trying to, well, I was told by one of my martial arts teachers to meditate every day for 10 minutes. And I really have a hard time with it. And I missed the last 2 days. So one thing I'm going to carry lightly, I'm not going to grasp tightly because if I grasp onto this idea that I am bad for missing 2 days and I need to try harder, and if I really cared about what my teacher said, I would not have missed those 2 days. I would have been a good student. And now I have shame brought into the equation of that I didn't, and I let him down and I didn't do the right thing and now I've messed up, right? And that's going to create this feeling that I can't try again. I have to avoid now this thing that brings me shame. And I'm not, no, we're not doing that. So I'm going to just carry lightly the idea that I do want to meditate every day. And if I miss a day, it's okay. And I can just try again tomorrow. And even though I'm really, 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 really shitty at meditating, I can keep trying and there are no consequences. There are no consequences to being shitty at meditating. Nobody else is there inside my brain to hear how shitty it is. So I can just keep going at it and it's okay. And it's good. It'll be good for me.
Truth. You got this. I
do.
believe in you.
I'm gonna take kind of a similar route that Ben took in like connecting it to the lens of the episode Aftershocks. And specifically, one of the things that I thought of during our discussion, but I didn't explicitly say because there wasn't really a natural point, but this episode and also, God, which episode was it? Was it the Northern Air Temple episode of the original show? You know, you have this character of Hiroshi Sato, and you have the character of the machinist, who both are revealed to be using their talents and their intelligence and their ability to innovate in order to develop weapons for the antagonist of the respective series. The machinist ends up, he's revealed that he was making weapons for the Fire Nation in order to protect the community that he has built and protect them from the incursion of the Fire Nation. So he was essentially just, going back to last month, he was appeasing them to protect his son and his community. And then Hiroshi, he has this, antagonism towards benders because his wife was killed by one. And so he develops weapons for the Equalists. And as someone who is an engineer myself, it's undeniable that like across media there's this vilification that is not without natural cause of the innovation of technology, because a lot of the times that is in opposition to what we would deem to be like nature or tradition. So for the machinist, what he does is directly in opposition to the tradition that is present within the air temple. And so, like, Aang sees this one last piece of the temple that cannot be touched by someone who is not an airbender and finds that it has been desecrated by weapons that are being created for the air nomads, for the Fire Nation, sorry. And in this episode, we see that the Equalists have been developing weapons in order to fight directly against bending, which is seen as like this unifying force within the world. And it also made me think of a conversation that I just actually had with coworkers this week, which is like, how responsible are we for the use of our technologies? Because especially as a mechanical engineer, you know, like one or two of the biggest hirers are companies like Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman. And, you know, for me personally, I have made a promise to myself to not work for those kinds of companies that, you know, deal directly in the design and development of weapons that are used to take lives. However, you know, I design circuit breakers now, and I don't have any control over what application those are used in, you know, in terms of like transferring power to something and like shutting off power. And you know, I've also worked for previous companies that have had a history of, you know, poisoning people or chemical testing in the past. And at what point do you have complicity in those things? So I don't know if I really have a resolution to this thought necessarily. It's something that I'm still exploring, and I've not really found a clean answer to how to think about these things, but it's something that I'm going to continue to think about. And I feel like a really interesting movie to watch that explores this discussion a little bit is the movie Michael Clayton, with George Clooney, directed by Tony Gilroy, who also created Andor. Great movie.
If, on the other hand, you want something animated to watch that discusses this predicament, I highly recommend watching Arcane season 1, where our friends in that show absolutely have a conversation very much on this subject. So highly recommend that as well. All right, friends. It has been a great episode, but we have one more thing before we end. And that is to be grateful. We want to be grateful. We want to thank a character for doing or being something super neat. So, who has a character they're grateful for, and why? Nobody. Okay, cool. Great.
Everyone sucks.
I'm actually gonna say Mako, even though like there was a point in the episode that he definitely annoyed me.
Bold.
What did he do that was good? Let's hit
It's
this
mainly the end of the episode where he actually, you know, says to Korra, like, "I'm sorry, we didn't believe you." And
a man says sorry. Good.
Yeah, and like there's absolutely like better options for who to be grateful for this episode. But
no such thing.
I think that within an episode, when you have a character that like does something shitty and then takes accountability for that shittiness, I think we should acknowledge it.
I'm a sucker for it. It happened earlier in the season with Tenzin. It happens a lot with Tenzin, actually. But like, I'm a sucker for it every time. I'm just like, yes, that's right. You admit when you're wrong.
Yes, and to go keep going on that, his realization is animated. We see it. It's not just like, you're wrong. There's no way. And then at the end, I'm sorry. It's he's coming to realize, and he makes the choice that he has to go witness this for himself.
Hmm.
So, okay. You've convinced me. I'm not choosing him though.
I also
Who are
didn't
you
think
choosing?
I didn't think any of you would choose Mako. So
Correct.
that's part of the reason why I said Mako.
I've chosen Mako before
That's true.
as
I'm
a
sure there'll
rebel.
be a time. I'm sure there'll be a time when I choose him, but today is not that day. Maybe not. I don't know. I can't think of a time, but
All right, who's up?
Never say never.
You can go, Kelly.
I feel like I'm not even fully decided. I'll feel like I'll go Tenzin. He's just like my favorite character anyways. It's not even it's upsetting how he is my favorite, but also I hate him sometimes. But anyways, I feel like yeah, it's already kind of talked about it, but like between him and Lynn, good synergy, connection that is non-hostile. And I just think that that's nice to see them working together. And he's also like in the fight scene where, like Korra and Lynn are kind of fighting separately, right? I feel like I like that they animated his consideration for Korra, right? They're like showing that his fighting style is very like, it's obviously he's an air nomad, he's an airbender, but I don't know, I just think he's great.
Yeah, agreed.
He
I
does
mean, there's
make
a
sense.
lot of low-hanging fruit, right? I already talked about being grateful to Asami and Korra, right? For gut instinct is to support their friends. Um, I think that's massive. Um, so I suppose I'm gonna go wide here, and I imagine that, these two are not the only people impacted by this attack, right? On not just pro bending, but bending. And that there are a lot of people who are very scared and struggling to figure out what to do and how to live in a city where this is happening. And I'm really grateful for all the people that I can imagine are supporting their friends and families that are surrounding them with means, right? If they have the capacity to do so. So I guess all the non-seen, unaired pieces and people that are supporting each other in the aftermath of this attack. Take that.
That's beautiful.
Love it.
I think I'm torn between Korra and Asami, especially because what Ben has already lifted up about the two of them. But I think for this one, I think it's gonna have to go towards Asami
Boom.
because of not only what she does at the beginning of the episode, but what she does at the end of the episode, right? Allowing everyone the ability to escape, because if she hadn't turned literally on her father, right? Turned her hand against her father, who knows what would have happened to them? They could have all been imprisoned or worse. So just uplifting that, right? That they all owe their current state of safety to this young teenage woman. And that's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. Showing courage against your enemies is one thing, but showing courage against your friends is another. Uh, anyway, uh, thank you all for being a part of this lovely experience. It's always great to watch an episode of Korra. And thank you all for watching it so attentively. There's so much to pull out. Next, we'll be talking about episode 8.
8.
And who's in charge of that one? Rahul?
Mm-hmm.
Rahul will have something up his sleeve for that episode. But until then, that sounded weird. Until next time, be well and do good.
Bye.